There's a sound that only happens once in a very long while inside an NXT arena. It's not the entrance music. It's not the pyro. It's not even the roar of a crowd losing their minds after a near fall. It's something quieter than all of that, a collective held breath. A whole arena full of people who came in expecting a great show and are suddenly realizing they're watching history. That sound happened on NXT. And if you weren't watching, then you need to sit down, because what we're about to walk through together is one of the most jaw-dropping championship moments this brand has produced in years. Welcome to Wrestling Impact. I'm so glad you're here for this one. Because this is the kind of story that reminds you exactly why professional wrestling is the most unpredictable, most thrilling, most emotionally overwhelming form of entertainment on the planet. This is the story of how Sol Ruca climbed to the very top of NXT, survived one of the most brutal triple threat matches the brand has ever seen, and walked out of that arena as the new NXT champion. Let's go back to the beginning. 4 months, and I mean months, the NXT championship picture had been one of the most hotly contested, most volatile situations on the entire roster. The gold had traded hands, rivalries had deepened into something almost personal, and the landscape was littered with talent who all had legitimate claims to the top spot. There was tension in every promo. There was fire in every match. And sitting right in the middle of all of it, watching and waiting and working harder than almost anyone else in that building on any given Tuesday night, was Sol Ruca. Now, if you've been following Sol Ruca's journey on NXT, you already know that she is not your average superstar. She brings something to this business that you genuinely cannot teach. That instinct. That athleticism. The way she moves in the ring is unlike anything you've seen before. She's got the kind of physical gifts that make even veterans stop what they're doing and just watch. But raw talent alone doesn't win championships. Raw talent gets you in the building. What wins championships is something else entirely. It's the hunger, the resilience, the ability to absorb every setback, every loss, every moment where the world seems to be saying not yet, and somehow find a way to flip that into fuel. Sol Ruca had been doing exactly that. Every match, every week, she was putting in the work that doesn't always show up on highlight reels, the grinding performances, the hard-earned victories over credible opponents, the slow and deliberate building of a resume that nobody could ignore. And the NXT universe had been watching. They'd been watching, and they'd been getting louder for her every single week, because when you see someone doing everything right, when you see someone who deserves it, you start to believe. And belief is a powerful thing in a wrestling arena. But the road to that triple threat? It wasn't clean. Nothing worth having ever is. The weeks leading into this championship match were chaotic in the best possible way. NXT general management had laid out the stakes clearly. The NXT championship would be decided in a triple threat match, and the contenders had been determined through a gauntlet of brutal competition. Sol Ruca had earned her spot the hard way, putting on back-to-back performances that left the crowd on their feet and left the commentary team scrambling for new words to describe what they were seeing. But she wasn't alone in that match. Not by a long shot. Her opponents were each, in their own right, completely legitimate championship-level talents. Both brought their own stories into this match. Both had their own claims, their own momentum, their own reasons to believe tonight was going to be their night. That's the thing about a triple threat. Everyone walks in convinced they're winning. The math only works for one of them. And on this particular night, the tension was absolutely electric. The backstage atmosphere in the hours before this match was something else entirely. You could feel it radiating through the broadcast even before the opening pyro hit. Cameras caught Sol Ruca in the locker room area, completely locked in, headphones on, going through her pre-match routine with this look of absolute focus on her face. No nerves visible. No doubt. Just this quiet, terrifying certainty. Like she already knew. Like she'd already seen how this night ended and she was just going through the steps to get there. One of the backstage crew members who was present that night said later, and I'm paraphrasing here, that she walked through the hallway on her way to the gorilla position like someone who owned the building. Like she wasn't going to a match. Like she was going to a coronation. And then her music hit. I want to pause here for a second and just talk about what a Sol Ruca entrance does to an NXT crowd, because it matters for the story. When that music drops and she comes through that curtain, the entire arena recalibrates. There's always this moment, you can see it if you watch the crowd, where people who maybe weren't fully locked and suddenly are. She has that thing that you cannot manufacture. That presence. That electricity. She came down that ramp with the weight of every week of hard work sitting on her shoulders, and she wore it like it was nothing. The crowd was absolutely rocking for her. Signs in the audience. Chants starting before she even hit the ring. This was her moment, and everyone in that building felt it. The other two competitors made their entrances, and the tension in the arena ratcheted up with every passing second. The champion came out last, as champions do, and the crowd was split in that way that only the best NXT crowds can be genuinely invested in all the competitors, genuinely uncertain about the outcome, genuinely ready for whatever was about to happen. The referee went through the championship presentation, the title glinting under the arena lights, and then the bell rang. And from the very first exchange, you could tell this was going to be one for the books. Triple threat matches have their own rhythm, their own logic. Early on, you almost always get a period of circling, of tentative engagement, of each competitor trying to figure out the geometry of the situation. Who do you go after first? Who do you let battle while you recover? When do you insert yourself? It's chess played at full speed with people who can hurt you, and all three women in this match understood that completely. The opening minutes were a masterclass in controlled aggression, short bursts of action, quick retreats, everyone sizing everyone else up. But Ruca broke the chess match first. She came in hard against one opponent, a sequence of strikes that was precise and violent and designed to do two things simultaneously: inflict damage and send a message to the third person watching. The crowd erupted. This was not a Ruca playing it safe or waiting for her spot. This was a Ruca who had decided tonight was different. Tonight she was setting the pace. Tonight she was the aggressor. The match escalated quickly from there. One of the great things about a triple threat is that the action almost never slows down because there's always someone fresh coming in, always a new threat, always a new wrinkle. And this match used every single one of those dynamics. You'd get a stretch where two competitors were brawling on the outside while the third recovered in the ring, only for things to reshuffle and produce a completely different configuration. The storytelling was masterful. Every few minutes, the match reinvented itself. There was a sequence in the middle of this match, and I think this is the moment that people who watched it live will remember most, where all three competitors ended up on the mat simultaneously. The crowd went quiet for just a beat. Just one beat. And then the noise came back louder than it had been all night, because everyone watching understood they'd just seen something they might not see again. Three championship-level athletes, all down at the same time, all reaching for the same thing, none of them willing to quit. Ruca was the first to her feet. And when she got up, something shifted. There's a word that gets thrown around too much in wrestling: momentum. But there are moments where you can genuinely see it transfer. You can watch it happen in real time, this invisible thing that changes the temperature of a match, that changes who the crowd is leaning toward, that changes who the universe believes is going to win. When Ruca got to her feet first in that moment, the momentum transferred to her and it didn't come back. She went on an absolute run. One of her opponents went for a counter and turned it inside out. The crowd lost their collective minds. The other competitor came off the second rope and got caught in midair. Another explosion from the crowd. Was everywhere. Fast, precise, relentless, absolutely refusing to let either opponent get a foothold. The commentary team was struggling to keep up. The crowd was on their feet. This was it. This was the moment we'd all been waiting for. But championship matches, great ones, anyway, don't end cleanly. They don't give you what you want right when you want it. They make you earn the emotional payoff. They make you suffer just a little bit first. One of Sol's opponents managed to cut her off right at the peak of her momentum. A desperate, last-ditch counter that landed just right, and suddenly Sol was down and the crowd's breath caught again. The other two competitors sensed the opening and went after each other with renewed urgency, both knowing that with Sol temporarily removed from the equation, one pinfall was all it took. There was a near fall that had half the arena convinced the title was changing hands. The referee's hand came down once, twice, and then the shoulder came up and the arena absolutely roared with the combination of relief and disbelief that only a great near fall can produce. Ruca came back into the picture at exactly the right moment. She broke up a pin attempt that would have ended the match, a pin that, if it had landed, would have told a completely different story tonight. Instead, she broke it up, sent one opponent rolling out of the ring, and found herself one-on-one with the other in the center of the NXT canvas. The sequence that followed is already being discussed as one of the finest stretches of in-ring action NXT has produced this year. It was everything you want from a championship match: speed, power, near falls, big moves, drama, reversals that made the crowd gasp and then scream. Back and forth, neither woman giving an inch, the crowd riding every single moment. There was a reversal chain that lasted almost 30 seconds and ended with Ruca in position for her signature finish, and the crowd was on their feet screaming before she even executed it. She hit it clean, right in the middle of the ring, and the place went absolutely nuclear. But because this is wrestling, and because this is NXT, and because apparently the universe decided Ruca needed to earn this the absolute hardest way possible, the third competitor, who had been recovering on the outside, slid back into the ring and broke up the pin with literally a fraction of a second to spare. I cannot properly describe to you the noise that produced. Equal parts heartbreak and disbelief, and the kind of raw, primal crowd energy that you only get when an arena full of people are completely and utterly invested in what they're watching. Someone near a live microphone could be heard screaming, "Are you kidding me?" which, honestly, was everyone's reaction. What followed was the final chapter of this match, and it was beautiful and brutal in equal measure. All three women went at each other with everything they had left. The match spilled outside. There were near falls from all three competitors in quick succession that had the crowd on a roller coaster, up with hope, down with heartbreak, up again, down again. The champion was fighting to survive. Sol Ruca was fighting for everything she'd ever worked for. The third competitor was refusing to let this be anyone else's night, and then Sol Ruca found her moment. In the middle of this chaos, with all three women near the center of the ring, she read the situation with that instinct that separates special athletes from merely great ones. She created space, she got her positioning, and she hit a sequence that was simultaneously her most athletic moment of the night and the most emotionally charged, because the crowd knew. They knew before the referee even started his count. The arena was already rising to its feet. The count hit 2 and the third competitor was just a half step too late to intervene. 1, 2, 3. The bell rang, and NXT had a new champion. The arena didn't so much erupt as just absolutely detonate. The sound was like a physical thing. Sol Ruca was on her knees in the center of the ring, and for a moment she just stayed there, hands over her face, the weight of the moment hitting her in real time. This is the part of professional wrestling that they can't script, and they can't fake the genuine human reaction to achieving something enormous. The referee presented her with the championship, and she took it and she held it against her chest like something precious, like something that had been hers all along and had only now, finally, been returned to her. The crowd was serenading her. You could see people in the front row with tears in their eyes. You could see a kid in the crowd holding up a Sol Ruca sign with the biggest smile on her face that you've ever seen. That's what this business is about. That's why we watch. That's why we come back every week, why we follow these stories, why we care so deeply about what happens inside those ropes. Because every once in a while, the person who deserves it most actually gets it. And the whole world gets to feel it with them. Sol Ruca stood in the center of that NXT ring, the championship raised above her head, and she wasn't just representing herself in that moment. She was representing every person who's ever been told to wait their turn, every person who's done everything right and had to keep waiting anyway, every person who kept grinding even when the results weren't coming. She was representing the belief that the work eventually gets rewarded. And standing there under those arena lights, with the crowd calling her name, she was proof of it. The new era of NXT began that night, and we were lucky enough to watch it happen together. This is Wrestling Impact, and if this video gave you that feeling, if it took you back to that match and made you feel those moments all over again, then do me a favor and hit that like button, because it genuinely helps this channel more than you know. Drop a comment below and tell me your reaction when Sol Ruca's music hit after that bell. I want to know if you called it. I want to know if you were on your feet. And if you're not subscribed to Wrestling Impact yet, what are you even doing? Tap that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we break down the biggest moments in wrestling every single week and you do not want to miss what's coming next. Sol Ruca is champion. The era begins. And Wrestling Impact will be here for every single moment of it.